education hasn't changed in about 500 years. They often talk about the Rip Van Winkle question. If Rip Van Winkle had gone to sleep in the 16th century in a classroom and woken up today, with very minor modifications, the classroom would look exactly the same. There's a sage on stage, which is the teacher up front. There are a number of students quietly sitting in the back in rows, much like a production line taking notes. Given how much our world has changed, why has education not changed? We keep on talking about disruption. We keep on talking about the pace of change. I think one of the main reasons, there are many, many reasons why education hasn't changed. And I will caveat all my very brief remarks by saying that I'm going to talk only about K through 12, because there's a very big difference between K through 12 and college education. But I think early educational stuff has far greater reach, far greater impact on what happens than college education does. The main reason why education hasn't changed in so long is that education is very intricately tied into almost every aspect of our daily life. But there are actually 6 issues that people often conflate when they talk about schooling. I want to just quickly list them because it wasn't obvious to a lot of people until the pandemic hit just how broad that term actually was. So schooling, by the way, is often regarded and in fact started off as a way to have a safe place to deposit your children while the parents go off to work. Schooling also in many ways helps children learn to deal with their peer groups. If a child lived at home all on their own, they wouldn't necessarily learn how to share, how to interact with people, how to listen to their teams, how to work in groups. And schooling, the third point I think that is often disregarded in schooling is that schooling actually teaches young children how to deal with hierarchies. Teachers have inherently more powers and more input than a fellow student does. Rules, if you break a rule, there are consequences to breaking a rule in a school and so on. And then there are the more obvious parts of schooling: instruction, assessment, and finally certification. The problem is these two groups, the first 3 versus the second 3, actually are quite different. And for the most part, people have ignored the first 3. I would say to you, how many of you picked schools for your children based on how happy you thought your children would be compared to how good an education they would actually receive, where the goodness of the education was often measured in terms of what the next step would be. If they were going into high school, people often said, what kind of colleges will they be able to get into? If they were going to elementary school, you perhaps said, what kind of high schools will they be able to get into? We can talk about all 6 of these at length, because I think all 6 of these have sort of come to the fore in this very unusual time that has only, I think, occurs once a century or so. But I'm going to pick one that I think is actually more interesting because it's more concrete. I mean, I can talk about how learning to deal with your peers actually improves educational outcomes and so on. But I'm actually going to talk about assessment because I have a very short period of time. Assessment makes it very clear that there's something wrong with our 500-year-old model of education. Assessment has always been structured, as Einstein once said, to measure what can be measured, not what should be measured. Most assessment around the world today occurs using these bubble forms, the multiple choice questions. They don't actually measure how well you understand something, how creative you are, how intuitive your grasp of that topic is. What they actually measure is how good are you at filling out bubble forms. That's completely unrelated to what the rest of your life is actually going to be. But we don't really care because assessment has always been framed as, is it universal? Can we do this on all the children? Quick, because we need to return results quickly. And consistent. So if I do an assessment today, am I going to get the same results if I were to do the assessment a week from today? Nowhere do we mention in our assessment the notion of, is this relevant? Or does this give us actually insights into what's happening with the child? I once had a long discussion with teachers because I really strongly disagree with the current model of assessment, whether assessments actually measure what a child has learned or what a teacher has taught. In some ways, if our children do not do well on some of these tests, no matter how much we disagree with the tests, I could argue that the fault lies in the fact that they were not taught well. It's not the child's job necessarily to be able to answer questions well if the teacher never bothered to teach it. I think this lockdown has given us a golden opportunity to rethink a lot of things. But particularly in a field as tightly integrated with so many different aspects of society, it's almost been completely impossible to change. Assessment becomes something that we do have a once in a blue moon opportunity to change. And I will very quickly mention two very big events that occurred, at least in this context of the US K-12 education system this year. One is the SATs. So the SATs are a universal test that all high school students take in order to be able to get admission to the college of their choice. Multiple studies over many, many years, going back 20 years, have shown that the SATs actually don't predict anything about your college performance. So why then do we continue doing the SATs? And part of it is, well, that's how we've always done it. Well, this year, suddenly with the lockdown occurring, they couldn't conduct the SATs. And so a number of colleges, admittedly, reluctantly, stepped up and said, we won't require the SATs for admissions this year. In fact, I think the UCs, the University of California system, went the furthest, and they said, starting 2025, we will start phasing out SATs completely. We'll try and figure out some alternate model, but we actually will no longer, in fact, insist on a multiple choice entrance test that doesn't seem to carry any weight. A much more interesting thing, I think, occurred with the APs, the so-called advanced placement tests. The advanced placement tests couldn't be cancelled because the advanced placement test actually allows students to carry credit for work that they've done in the high school to colleges. And so in order to be able to make sure the transfer of credit actually occurs, you had to have the APs happen. People had been doing work in a classroom for a year that they were hoping to be able to get credit for in colleges. But what do? You're suddenly now faced with a situation where all the students are at home, they have access to computers, they have access to phones, they have access to their family members. There's no proctoring possible on a scale like this, and you can't cancel the test. So the APs pivoted very quickly, and in a very interesting way. They pivoted from a multi-hour, multiple choice test to a 45-minute, 2-question test. And the 2 questions, for the most part, were meant to be answered orally. So they would time you. There was still, I think, some artificial restrictions placed on how the tests were actually done. But they'd start the clock when they showed you the question. You had to record an oral answer. And presumably the reason they did the oral answer was so that you couldn't turn around and ask your siblings or your parents or your friends what the answer should actually be. And they said, we're going to grade this very differently. Now, this is not an easy test to grade. There's going to be subjectivity in it. There's going to be issues in it and so on. But it's a much more honest assessment than a multiple choice test that actually doesn't reflect anything that the student is going to do once the test is actually done. And I'm out of time, but I'm going to actually add the one incident that I thought really triggered I hope people don't think of this as a rant, even though it is a complaint about assessment. Our local high schools here essentially had to do exactly what the SATs did. They said, please stay at home, we'll try and figure out stuff. Then they couldn't actually figure anything out. So they started assigning some, I think, relatively easy to assign work that wouldn't be graded. 2 interesting things happened. One was they said all grading is going to switch to pass, no pass. And that had major implications because people suddenly said, wait, I don't have to worry about whether I'm going to get an 80 or 81 or 82. I just have to get 50 and I'm passed. And in fact, a lot of classes said, you'll get a pass if you just submit anything. Just submit something. One of the assignments was actually in the English language, English literature class. They were reading 1984 when the pandemic hit, and the teacher assigned a task to the students that said, please summarize how you see what happened in 1984 to the parallels with the situation today. And she was very flexible about what she would accept. Most people, I think, in the good old days would have submitted a 3 or a 5 or however long an essay that they would have needed in order to be able to summarize what the book actually is supposed to represent. Partly because nobody wishes to take a risk where their assessments are concerned. These assessments are high stakes assessments. But now, there was no risk. There's a pass, no pass. And if you submit anything, you're guaranteed to get a pass. One of the submissions that came in had no words on it. It was just an optical illusion. The teacher looked at it for a while, and we were talking about this in the context of another conversation about assessments and so on. And the teacher said she reached back to the student to say, what does this have to do with 1984? And the student said, 1984 is all about spinning alternate realities. I think even though you're looking at a piece of paper that's completely static, you stare at it for about 5 seconds and the paper appears to move. To me, the core point of 1984 was the fact that people are subject to illusions and people are subject to suggestions that they can't necessarily fight against unless they really train themselves to do it. The teacher was quite pleased with his submission. I mean, actually, in some ways, I almost think that submission to me characterized some of the better aspects of education. The ability to think outside the box, the ability to be able to say, I really don't necessarily want to express in words what 99 other people are going to do. I don't think there's opportunity for either changing the AP test, the advanced placement test, the opportunity to rethink whether SATs are required and do anything for the student or not. Are they really something that exacerbate the economic divide between the haves who will go to test prep classes and the have-nots who will go to the SAT test without having had breakfast? I think this is a golden opportunity for us to rethink how education works. We almost will never ever in the next 100 years get this kind of opportunity again. Everything comes to a standstill and people are scrambling for solutions. To me, and I think to all of us, I mean, I assume we are all like-minded in this case. Education is our one big opportunity to structure the future of humanity and where we end up hoping our children and the generations following them will go. And to me, this is a perfect opportunity, even though I completely agree with everybody, the lockdowns, the virus issues and so on are serious and onerous. There are silver linings in this that we should not miss. And so I hope we will all take away from this something that we can try and change either in our own lives or in my case, in how K through 12 education and assessment is done. Thank you.